Welcome to One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, the exponential success coach. Today, we are talking about how to cook a frog. It's an old analogy. I wanted to bring it to you. A little bit gross, and yet the analogy is something that we all need to be paying attention to. There's a saying that goes, in order to cook a frog, you start the frog in water that is cool or lukewarm, basically comfortable for a frog. And then you turn up the temperature just a degree and another degree and another degree. And the frog adapts to this warmer and warmer and warmer water, right? So if you dropped a frog in boiling water, it would scramble to get out of the pot. It would be, like, yikes, that's hot, that's out, I'm out. But if you put a frog in cool to lukewarm water and you turn up the heat a little at a time, the frog adapts until the frog system gives out, and that's how you cook a frog. As I said, kind of gross, and yet I wanted to bring it to you because the analogy is absolutely spot on perfect for what so many of us do in our lives. And you need to be paying attention to, where have you allowed certain things to show up, where if the boiling hot water had shown up, you'd go, oh, heck no, I'm out. But you tolerated a little here, you tolerated a little there, you tolerated a little here. And it could be anything from something you've eaten, it was only a little sugar, it was only a little, this or that. And it was only one soda or two, I only drink a 6-pack a day, to alcohol. It was only one drink, or two, I only have 6 drinks a day, to he or she was only rude to me that once. It's only when we go out that it really shows up and bugs me. He or she stops me from seeing my family, but I talk to them every so often. The things that you begin to tolerate, that if someone came to you and said, a 6-pack of soda a day is really harmful, and you'd go, I know that, right? Or having somebody put you down in public is really abuse. It's mental abuse. And there's no need to tolerate that. Most people go, I know that. Like, I wouldn't tolerate that. But the fact that it happens slowly over time in your relationship, in your body, in your environment, it's like, oh, I'll just put this here and I'll get back to it. And I'll share with you, it's one of the things that I battled. That the clutter thing was one of the things I battled as my frog in boiling water. Like, if I came to a place and went, oh my gosh, there's piles of papers everywhere, how can anybody handle that? This was in my history, right? That I grew up with my dad having important piles of papers that he was going to get to. And I learned that if it's important, it's got to be out and visual so that I can get to it. And so clutter became a thing. Like, that's not clutter if I'm going to get to it. It's not horrible if I'm going to sort through it, because that pile is really important. I need it. And the truth is, the things in that pile may or may not be important. They may or may not be useful. They may or may not be worth hanging on to. For me, that was my frog. That was my boiling water. I will say I was the frog. And my boiling water was, I'll just put this paper here, or I'll put this journal article here, and I will read it. I'll get back to it. I'll come back to it. And the truth was, I would come back to it 6 months later and go, why did I save this? But in the meantime, in those 6 months, I was tolerating the water heating up. I was tolerating things in my life that didn't belong, that ultimately would suffocate me. And so I'm bringing this to you because I think that you have things in your life that you've been putting up with. And it starts out as, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. That rattle in my car, it's not that bad. I still need to get from here to there. So as long as I can hear the rattle in my car, and it's not like horrible, I'll be okay. The paper that turns into a pile of an inch, 2 inches, 12 inches of paper, it's not that bad when it's a paper put on a pile. And then when it's, wow, that's the pile, it is piling up, yikes, then it's pretty bad. It's not that bad when you have a soda, but then two or three or six, or it's not that bad if you have whatever, right? A thing that happens in your relationship. You have to choose what your cutoff point is. You have to choose what is happening in your world, that you say, you know what, it's before it crosses the line, we need to do something different. This is what it requires courage. It just requires courage. And that's an important thing. I've worked with people who have stuff going on in their relationships. I've worked with people who have stuff going on at their office. And at the office, in their organizations, if you've got an autocrat for a leader, the autocrat, the basically, they are imposing things on you that make no sense, and it can seem like things change moment to moment. I asked you to do this. Well, I needed to set these things up in order to do that thing you asked me for. It's taking too long. It's like, it might be taking too long. That's the process, right? And that's a conversation. That's a difficult conversation, because the autocrat tries to make it personal. At what point do you say it's not personal and you get to stop that? You've asked for a thing. I'm creating the thing you asked for. If you walked into any situation and you saw something going on that looked like there was mental abuse, even physical abuse, or I shouldn't say it that way, or physical abuse, right? It's not dismissive. But in workspaces, it's less likely that it's physical abuse. If you saw mental abuse, physical abuse, uh, harassment, right? You go, hey, timeout, not okay. Let's stop this thing. When you're in the situation, how do you define it? Well, they asked for this. Awesome. That's fair. Well, they asked for this way. Well, they asked for this and then called me something, called me a name. It's like, at what point does it move from being leadership to a dictatorship to autocracy to abuse? And what I'm asking you to do is to pay attention to what you have tolerated in terms of the water level, the heat of the water that you're in. Look around your environment. Look at your home. Look at your business. Look at your relationships. And that's not just who are you partnered with. That is your parents, your kids, your siblings, anybody that's asking for anything from you. Look at that and see what it is that they're asking for. Is it fair? Is it reasonable? Is it right? Is it just? If you could look at it from the outside and say, wow, this behavior is not okay, right? If anybody else stepped in and could look at it and say, this behavior is not okay, what is okay? And take a look at your process. What did you allow to have happen? Right? Because there's no reason to be the frog in the water that heats up and heats up and heats up. You're in charge of that pot. You're in charge of the pot of water. Don't let it heat up. Don't allow yourself to be buried or cooked by something just because you're tolerating just a little more and you're tolerating just a little more and you're tolerating just a little more. There's some things that you can tolerate. There's some things that you could recognize are totally the other person's process and don't need to trigger you. And there's some things that you need to hold firm on. Where do you need to hold firm? What is your critical cutoff point? And can you see it coming before you reach that level of, yikes, we've gone from 211 to 212 in terms of Fahrenheit boiling water. That 1 degree that switches from it's really hot to now it's boiling. What is your own cutoff point? So think about that. It's really a matter of personal growth when you do this. I am choosing to look at my life. That's really the statement you're making. I'm choosing to look at my life. I'm choosing to see what I'm tolerating. I'm choosing to see what I no longer wish to tolerate. And I'm choosing to make a difference in my life about what that is. Because what I want to bring into my life is joy, abundance, love, right? All those things. And if what I've been tolerating doesn't feed that, I need to cut it off sooner rather than later. That's what I want you thinking about. That is what will bring you through this day and the next day and the next. Start paying attention to what you've been tolerating and start paying more attention to what you want to bring into your life that's going to support you and propel you further. I'm Dr. Wayne Pernell, Dr. P. This is One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. Thank you. Thank you for being here.